My name is Roberta Eickman, and the pronouns I use are she and her. The title of my talk, as written in the order of service, is only partially correct. It actually is the state of democracy. Do we even have a democracy? My intention in these few minutes is to give you some things to reflect on and possibly something new to think about. When I say the word democracy, what comes to your mind? Most often, it's just a given that the U.S. is a democracy. Things like freedom, the right to vote, equality come up. Most are somewhat vague and idealized concepts. In fact, there are indexes and matrices of categories and principles that can be measured and compared. These define what a full or flawed democracy is, or in our case, a democratic republic. These are the must-haves, the core principles of a full and healthy democracy. Citizen participation is the rock-bottom foundation. There must be a politically engaged population that votes regularly and pays attention to public discourse. In other words, a citizenry that is adequately informed and involved in discussion, peaceful demonstration, or protests. Interestingly, voter turnout in the U.S. generally fluctuates between only 50 and 60%. The next thing necessary is a free and fair electoral process, one that takes place within a pluralistic system of multiple and different political parties. We need to have a choice. The citizenry respects the will of the voters and commits to a peaceful transition of power. A democratic government operates openly and transparently. The people know if their government is working, is following the rules, has proper and effective checks and balances, and gives its citizens free choice and control over their own lives. A democracy emphasizes preserving and protecting civil liberties and human rights. It looks out for the freedoms of both the majority and the minority. Often, a Bill of Rights is enshrined, listing freedoms, especially the freedoms of speech, assembly, expression, and association, and certainly the freedom of the press. Of course, these protections require compliance through the rule of law and a free and independent judicial system. Paramount to this system is the belief that all citizens are equal under the law, and that there is a court ensuring that laws are applied equally and that no one is exempt or above the law. So there are lots of principles required for a democratic nation. I have just outlined the core elements which need to be in place and must also link together and function together. Underlining all this must be a general understanding and acceptance that a nation is a gathering of individuals and groups that together make up the whole, that there are norms we agree to and uphold, that we are one as a nation. As mentioned earlier, there are several indexes created by organizations like The Economist, UNESCO, the World Economic Forum, that measure the state of democracy in 167 nations and rank them as full, flawed, or authoritarian. Norway is first. Interestingly, they are also proud of being a socialist welfare state. Second is New Zealand. Third is Iceland. Sweden is fourth, and Finland rounds out the top 10. Uruguay is 14, Japan 16, Greece and Chile are 20 and 25 respectively. Estonia is in the top 30. Where is the United States? Number 39, the first nation rated to be flawed. I began with the question, are we even a democracy? And I will end with the question, what can we do about this situation? What are you going to do?
My name is Robert, and my pronouns are they or them. I'm an old man, but I realize that inside of me is an angry child, angry about all the racial, gender, sexual, economic, and plain old fear and hate that I was conditioned to believe was the way that God intended life to be for those less deserving of grace than me. There but for the grace of God go I, we were told to think, as if to say God loves me more than them. I am woke. I confess that the America I love, the democracy I value, and the democracy that I'm willing to fight for is rooted deeply in diversity of race and gender and sexual abilities and class and gifts and beliefs and social justice for all Americans and the kind of gods that we might name as the way we'd serve. I believe that democracy includes all of us, people, all the people. It includes equity and social justice for all Americans, and that includes MAGA. In the debate, Kamala repeatedly made the point that the hope of America is unity, and that the dream of democracy is a nation whose people work together to create an opportunity for all of us to be happy, and that as human beings we have more in common with each other than that which separates us, and I agree. I believe that we all want to be happy, and happiness comes in different forms for each of us. I believe that we all have noble human hearts, that we are all born with original blessing, born into grace, beloved by whatever name is used to point to that which created us. And I believe that the dynamic that lives within our human hearts and gives us life is love. And while love expresses itself in different forms and we call it different names, love itself is a manifestation of that which is divine within us and which in love and through love created us. I believe that preserving democracy boils down to rediscovering our basic humanness and recovering our commonalities and common ground upon which each of us can enjoy liberty and justice, along with the God-given right to pursue happiness. But how? How in our hate and fear-polarized world can we start the process of healing us? There was a movie that came to town, I think in June, called Undivide Us. Some of us were there at that movie. Many of us were not. But that movie showed us a way. And the way starts by looking at each other, listening without judgment, imagining and wondering with open curiosity. And doing so generates empathy and understanding. The movie clearly demonstrated that taking these steps towards finding commonality did not change the participants' beliefs, did not change their beliefs, but it did change their hearts. It softened them. Our work has always been to become whole human beings, and learning how to live together in a society that works better for all of us requires us to realize that no one is a stranger. As social justice activist Valerie Quar eloquently says, "You are a part of me that I do not know yet." So when I'm willing to accept those parts of me that I see in myself and I see in others, that I see in the person I fear or hate, then I grow willing to love more. I become willing to let go of fear, willing to become a welcoming person, willing to open, and with time and practice, welcoming all that disturbs us and scares us, annoys me, or pisses us off. Life goes on within us and without us, as the Beatles told us long ago. Key word here is willing. There is a simple practice that a friend of mine taught me that is helping me learn how to listen and see what is true about myself, true about others, and learning how to hold myself and others in love and kindness. And I invite you to experiment with it for yourself. When you are in contention with someone or some part of yourself, take a breath or two, and then imagine what might happen if you softened. Imagine what would happen if you looked and listened with a softened heart. What might happen if, with an open and calm mind, you looked and you listened and you allowed yourself to wonder about why the other person or what the other part of yourself needs to be happy. Imagine why they hate you. Imagine why they see you as their enemy. Imagine why you see them as your enemy. And what could happen if we imagined choosing love instead of fear? I found a poem that kind of encapsulates all this, and I'm going to read it to you. It's called When We Look. When we look at one another, we soften, we relent, listen, might forgive. We allow for silence, and when we see each other, are known, and in that moment, might change. Though nothing has moved or been spoken, there are some who say the walls cannot be broken, but suddenly we are in a free place, and the fields that extend from its center stretch for miles, as if out of the pupil and the iris of that momentary kingdom. A kingdom where we might be united in our shared humanity and might join together to live into the promise and the dream of building a nation where all people are created equal and there is liberty and justice for all.
It's tough to follow these great speakers today. I changed my plan for my talk this morning when I was driving home from Durango Pride. Yesterday, many of us spent the day meeting the community with our values, celebrating love in our lives and in the world. It was beautiful, and I think we should thank the organizers for that day. Don, Jim, Robert, Susan, John, Sheryl, and Stephen, and the many others in our congregation who showed up yesterday on the side of love. Thank you. And as I was driving home, I was reflecting on the many Pride events I have attended throughout my life, and I was filled with gratitude. How wonderful that Pride weekend is also the weekend in which we are celebrating democracy. Pride celebrations are fundamentally about our commitment to democracy. We make our values public with our solidarity and our life-saving, life-affirming message that no one is outside the force field of love. Pride, we remember, was a protest. And we must not forget that connection in the presence of our celebrations. The freedom to peaceful assembly is a critical piece of our democratic practice, one that we must cherish and never take for granted. And you have heard this morning in moving testimony that our democracy is perched on a threshold. We are, and the League of Women Voters signs are sobering. Vote like democracy depends on it. It does. Not only does our democracy depend on it, Our lives depend on it. The threat of Project 2025, as conjured by the Heritage Foundation, a conservative-leaning think tank and policy machine, is a terrifying plan to systematically attack our democracy. The ACLU, which is nonpartisan, describes Project 2025 in the following way. Project 2025 includes a long list of extreme policy recommendations touching on nearly every aspect of American life, from immigration and abortion rights to free speech and racial justice. A number of its recommendations rely on support from the executive branch and from Congress. Many other initiatives are outright unconstitutional. We should be afraid. We should worry about this threshold of democracy in which we are perched. I love Roberta's question this morning. What can we do? What can you do? What can I do? And my initial response is to say, now is the time to get powerfully grounded in our Unitarian Universalist values, to feel the call of justice, equity, pluralism, interdependence, generosity, and transformation in our lives. We can, as Robert encourages us, follow the call of love in our lives and put our faith into action in our relationships, developing tenderness for each other as we co-create the beloved community. This relational work matters. Our humanity is on the line. Anchored and tethered in relationship, we can create the world in which justice, kindness, equality, and equity for people in the earth is made manifest. What can we do? We can engage in efforts to revitalize and preserve democracy. The Preserving Democracy team here at UUFD is taking action, and we invite you to connect with the great work of this team. With the Preserving Democracy team, please rise and be recognized among us. Look. Look. Thank you. We are so grateful, and in just a few minutes, you'll hear from the team lead, Bonnie Miller, too. What can we do? What can I do? That invitation is haunting, and today we offer an opportunity for you to take action, to participate in a Reclaim the Vote national action by writing postcards to voters in Texas, inviting them to use their power to vote. Working with the Center for Common Ground, we are encouraging voting in voter suppression states. Our hope is to reach 250 voters in Texas with postcards. We invite you to join us at 11:30-ish, get a coffee, for a brief educational video here in the sanctuary, and we'll write cards together and have packets available to take home. If you're joining online and you would like to join in our postcard campaign, just let Teresa know, and we will make sure we get packets to you as well. We ask that you bring these postcards back to us next Sunday. We'll collect them, and we're going to send them out, bless them, and send them out with our love. There is a lot we can do. We can encourage people to register to vote. We can reach people in voter suppression states. We can encourage our own communities to vote. The statistic that only 50 or 60% of us is voting is really tough to hear. Let's take action. And as I take my leave this morning from this little bit of time, I share these words from Margaret Mead that I go to over and over again. They give me hope when hope feels far away. Margaret Mead shares, and we know this well, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has.